Hi, everyone. Welcome to Radiant Living, Inspiring Humanity to Thrive. This is Marisa B, and today I have with me Rei Hance. Thank you so much for coming, Rei. I want to tell you a little bit about Rei. She has had such a life. What do you say about Rei Hance? She was an actress in her 20s. She was a teacher and is still a teacher. She's taught memoir writing, Northern California, I believe. You were at the San Francisco Writers Grotto, I believe. Yes.
Yeah.
And she is a director, writer, producer, and studier and instructor, coach of the I Ching for over 25 years. Hi, Rei. Thank you so much for coming today.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm really happy to be here, coming to you live from the Liberty Library in Liberty, Maine.
It's lovely. It looks lovely there. The sun looks like it's shining bright.
We had a very wet summer, so we're finally at the end getting actual summer days, which is amazing.
Here as well, we've had so much rain in New York, and of course now today the sun is coming through on the side and the back, and it's up. I said, oh, I look like a ghost, but as I said, I'm not the important part here. I'm the host. It's really the guest speaker. So can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself? I mentioned briefly.
Oh my goodness. It's so interesting about, like, when you asked me for a bio, it's so funny because like those big tentpole events aren't really what make up my life. It's really the minutia. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? It's yes. It's the million tiny things. Like, how did I end up here? Not because of any one of those bigger sort of waypoints mm-hmm. in my life, but because of like a million itty bitty little decisions, like the sandwich that you pick for lunch, or like agreeing. Like I found myself in Maine because my godmother's boss had a house in Belfast, Maine, when I was on my way to Cape Breton in Canada. Mm-hmm. And she's like, well, why don't you just stay at his house on your way? And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And I completely fell in love after driving cross country with my dog, trying to find what felt like home after California. Mm-hmm. And nothing really worked. I was actually about to go back to California for Thanksgiving with my friend in Joshua Tree. Mm-hmm. And then I came to Belfast and I was like, oh, this is the thing. Mm-hmm. Like that moment of instant resonance, like, oh, this is where this has been leading to. You know how you get those moments where you're like, what is this? Mm-hmm. What is this? What is this? And I'm a Zen practitioner. And in Zen, there's this saying, not knowing is most intimate. Mm-hmm. And like allowing that discomfort of not knowing, like being like, oh, certainty is not going to help me here. Like, how much damage do we do as a species in the name of certainty?
It's true.
Probably most of the damage mm-hmm. we do is in the name of needing things to be certain or solid or safe, when that's no longer connected. That's no longer being intimate with life. But I digress. You asked about those tentpole mm-hmm. moments. Mm-hmm. And I would say, yeah, each decade of my life has had a different career trajectory. It's had a different identity in so many ways. Like, I've been almost unrecognizable to myself from one decade to the next. And I think that's been interesting because my relationship to identity is very fluid. So when I was in my 20s, when I graduated from a conservatory program, I ended up booking this movie out of Backstage called The Blair Witch Project. Mm-hmm. And I was not in the union. It was like one of my first films after college. I had been doing mostly theater. And then it blew up into this international sensation, and they used my real name. It just became this, I don't know I think the best moment to describe what that time was like was my 84 Celica breaking down on La Cienega under a billboard with my face on it.
Oh my gosh. There you go.
So that's like what
that's the irony.
Yeah. So like the steam is like spilling out from the hood, and there I am, like no money, no resources, no name anymore.
Oh my God. And like, let's say that was the biggest grossing indie movie ever.
Right. And so there I am. And the way we shot that was the actors being in the woods on our own. Like mm-hmm. we improvised the whole thing. So that whole experience, like watching greed unfold, mm-hmm. watching my identity be lost, being trolled from the dawn of the internet.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
the incredible cruelty that people were capable of. Like,
isn't that terrible? Terrible that it still goes on.
I mean,
it still happens.
is it was incredibly hard. It was incredibly hard at the time to realize that the success of this thing meant that that career was over for me. Like that took me another probably 7 years to really get my head around, that I became a has-been before I even arrived. Like my arrival and becoming a has-been were the same moment. And it was a very ornate punishment for a job well done, if you ask me. So that released me though from that path.
Mm-hmm.
Like I got to see, okay, so what would be the fruition of this path? Like, what is the dream here? I got a peep at what success looks like, I think, for most people in that world. And I was like, this is not for me. And so I feel like, in a sense, it was a great advantage to, like, I'm not still in LA slogging away at auditions. I have a life that I love today that is really meaningful for me and it reflects like my heart's desire in a way that I didn't even understand my heart's desire at that time. You know, I was coming out of a childhood with a narcissistic parent. And so performance was very, my performance versus identity had no separation for me. Mm-hmm. Love and belonging were conditioned on how well I performed and reflected my parent. Mm-hmm. So to be released from performance, you know, after I decided to leave LA, I moved to Northern California and became a cannabis grower. Mm-hmm. and was writing.
Did you do? Yes, you were writing and directing. Didn't you do a pilot?
I did that came out of that. Well, Growgirl was my memoir, and then I produced and directed and wrote a pilot called The High Country, mm-hmm. which was set in that world, which mm-hmm. was really, that was so fun. And there was a real hope that we could have done. Yeah. It's a shame that didn't work out, mm-hmm. but if that had worked out, then I would be back in that grind, yes. in that world. And that is just not where I want to be, but I would have gone there mm-hmm. because that still felt like success to me in a mm-hmm. certain way. Like identity and success, those two concepts. How much do we suffer for those two concepts? Mm-hmm. Identity and success. And I would say another one, especially for women my age, is relevance. You want to be successful, mm-hmm. you want to be relevant, you want to know who you are. When frankly, all of those things are fluid. They're all processes. There's no there. Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's really no identity to land in. There's no success to land in. There's no relevance to land in. So once I kind of got comfortable in discomfort, mm-hmm. And I think part of that came out of teaching. Teaching memoir was really revelatory for me. The pot growing was really revelatory. Pot growing taught me how to listen in a way that I didn't know before.
Like, why'd you stop that?
Because I wanted to publish a book about it, and I thought it was probably not wise to be engaged in a federally illegal activity while publishing a memoir about it.
And now it's so different. In fact, I was just recently on a summit, and one of the speakers, I believe she's in Canada, she is a cannabis educator.
Yeah,
and I found it so interesting to listen to everything. It's such an amazing
plant.
And well, of course, and I know the product, the hemp that comes from it, and really hemp is. We can use it for so many things. But she was very interesting, and I was very interested in all the information that she was giving the audience, myself included. Even though I was a speaker, I was listening, and I thought it was so important what she was saying, and how it really has gotten a bad rap, more or less. Let's face it, it's
it's powerful, mm-hmm. right? Anything powerful outside of our cultural norms is going to be suspect, whether it's a person, a plant, an animal, whatever. Do you know what I mean? If it doesn't conform to the conditions of the culture, it'll be treated at arm's length at best.
So your memoir is Growgirl.
My memoir is Growgirl.
Your time. Yes.
Right. So when I moved to Northern California, I started growing cannabis and became involved with this community that was really interesting to me, because now that it's legalized, you don't have that same mom and pop level distribution of wealth. Like anybody that was willing to take the risk could make a good living working from home and live in a beautiful place and be able to support their creative endeavors. And it was a pretty amazing time. And part of what Growgirl is for me is like a snapshot of what that world that no longer exists looked like. You know, not just my journey in that time of like finding a new way and what it means to really learn embodied listening and to have that intimacy with the more than human world. Like my cannabis plants, they're all female, the ones that are usually used for medicine. So I had this room of my girls I was growing indoors. So you would open this door and it was just like packed with this incredible energy. Like this plant is powerful. We've been co-evolving with this plant for over forever. We have shaped each other. And I think that just really showed me what that means. You know, like, what does it mean to be shaped by place? What does it mean to be shaped by the more than human world? How does that reflect on belonging? How does, like, now when I work with mostly women, although I love working with men, you know, women come to me oftentimes that are my age, who are their children are grown, and now they're like, oh shit, who am I now? You know, and one of the first things I ask when they have like a lot of like anxiety and depression are just like tops. You know, people are crawling out of their own skin. Like they don't feel at ease in their bodies at all. And like the first thing I ask is, do you know what phase the moon is in? Like,
they probably have no idea.
And they have,
right?
100% of the time, they have no idea.
Well, because they've never even stopped to think about it.
Right. Because they're too busy recycling and cycling these thoughts in their head that they have now tethered their identity to. I call it the identity turbine. So everything gets tangled in the identity turbine, but you have it in you to dismantle that and to notice how it works, because you put it together. Right. So you can take it apart and look at its component pieces and discern what's essence and what's performance.
True. So I think that if you have to start with your own identity before you can do anything else. And I think so many people don't, because they identify with what they do, right? How they relate to other people.
Right. And how much of that is habit. Yeah. That's just
habit. Or what's taught to them too.
Sure.
Right.
Oh, yeah. Right. And how much of that conditioning or those expectations become habit. And even when we see like how completely detrimental it is, like I'm in this group of women online who are like midlife women who complain endlessly about the patriarchy and then talk about getting their Botox. And I was like, through your insecurity, you are a subtle foot soldier of the patriarchy. Let go of your insecurity. You want to defeat the patriarchy? Let go of your insecurity. Be at home in your body. Welcome Eros. Be at ease in Eros, no matter your age. Embody desire that requires no object. Why do you need to be an object of desire? Just be desire. Make friends with your own yearning. Allow yourself the vulnerability of wanting.
Exactly.
That's sexy. That's what I call the ecology of erotic emergence. Like there's not an age to that. There's it's an ongoing process. And that's something that I find in a lot of older women that I admire. It's like, you are vital. Vital is sexy. Vital comes from curiosity, from openness, from receptivity, from like that confidence can't be performed. It can't be put on because you can feel it. You can smell it. It's embodied or it's not. And you can't get it injected into your face.
No.
You can't.
I think so many women, I guess they identify with whomever they're with as well. They just don't stand in their own identity. Maybe they don't know how.
It's terrifying. It's terrifying. You need someone to hold your hand at the precipice of that chasm that
Mhm.
has opened up somehow between your essence, your life force, and your life.
Mhm.
And the more you spend time like not willing to look down and just feel that tug, that gravity, because you're so afraid to be engulfed, because engulfment is scary. Engulfment can look like depression, it can look like anxiety, it can look like existential dread.
Mhm.
But it passes. As Rilke says, no feeling is final. But if you're continually turning away from that precipice, then you're never going to go anywhere else. You're always going to come back to it, and it's always going to be where you stop. And then where you stop is where you begin to decay.
Mhm. Exactly. And that's why I was so thrilled to have you on. I mean, the resilience that you've shown, the life that you live now, the life you've lived before. I mean, everything that you reinvented about yourself, and always being resilient in it, always. And then the idea of the I Ching and using the I Ching, and actually the I Ching, as you told me, came before even your success as an actress.
Yeah.
So you were already knowledgeable about it to some extent.
Well, starting in college, I was really into Jung in college. My degree was in theater, but I was just really obsessed with Jung. And so that's how I originally came to the I Ching, like through the Wilhelm translation that Jung had written the preface to. I would say one thing. I don't feel like I have had courage or been resilient. It's been a matter of following. Like my becoming is a following. I would not have enacted any of this.
Okay. All right.
Like I could not, as a little girl in the Philly suburbs, have pictured this life. But I can tell you that like all the fairy tales that I read of like women in the forest, even the scary witches in the forest, like they were the characters that appealed to me. I was like, those ladies have it going on. Like they don't seem to give a fuck. Like they're who they are. Like I love Baba Yaga, the archetype of Baba Yaga, like with her house in the forest on chicken feet. I'm big fan of like those archetypal shapeshifters. And to me, that's what the I Ching is. I know I hate to even compare it to tarot because it's just a very different field of being.
Yes.
With tarot, you have human figures, you have familiar archetypes, you have things are depicted in a way that actually creates, I think, a little bit of a barrier that the I Ching doesn't have. The I Ching is all in binary lines. It's either an open yin line or a closed yang line. So that's one of the hexagrams there. So you're just throwing coins and getting a number. So you're getting either an open or closed number, or if you throw all three of the same coin, then it's a transforming line. So it goes from a yin line to a yang line. It's so simple. The Oracle predates Chinese written language, and it started in China. But to me, it is such a fundamentally human, it's like an umbilical cord to the cosmos, not to overstate it.
Right.
It's a guide back to our own intuition. It's a way to like cut through those repetitive thoughts, cut through those ideas of identity, and come to a snapshot of an energetic moment. Like what I love about the I Ching is it's not a static archetype. It's a snapshot of energy in motion. So when you get transforming lines, you'll get 2 hexagrams. So it's like, what is like the energetic tone that's enveloping this moment, and how is it moving? So each of those transforming lines will have their own interpretation. So here, this is 31, the call. So you have that hexagram. So you would read how is the energy moving in 31, right? And then say you have, then follow with that with hexagram 64. Which lines are moving to take us from 31 to 64? And again, this just comes from throwing 3 coins at random.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, the I Ching is a reminder that random speaks its own vast tongue. And when we listen in an embodied way to seeming randomness, to the synchronicities that are patterns yearning to be revealed in our lives,
Mm-hmm.
yearning to be made manifest through our bodies, like that call is real, and our lives are the response if we can open to that past the repetitive thinking, if we can turn down the identity turbine and actually rest in essence. Mm-hmm. And allow ourselves to emerge into the next right thing, to follow rather than, I think there's so many ideas of what feminine leadership looks like. Mm-hmm. And so much of that is following, is listening. And that's not a disempowered position. That's the most powerful position of all, because you're responding to what's real. You're emerging from causes and conditions that are actually unfolding in real time. Mm-hmm. So how could that path steer you wrong? It might be uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. It might be engulfing. But I think the only thing worse than our craving for certainty is our fear of being engulfed. Those 2 things, I think, keep us as a species and as individuals from really blossoming into the fullness of our own birthright. In Buddhism, we call it Buddha nature. What is limiting your expression of your Buddha nature? How are you stopping yourself from being fully in that and allowing that to permeate what's around you? Like, and that was to go back to the cannabis growing. My mindset, my way of being absolutely impacted those plants. Mm-hmm. And I was growing all clones. They were all clones, all the same genetic material. And you would see, I would place clones that were struggling next to really vigorous plants in the vegetative stage. And you would see those struggling plants pick up off of the energy of the really robust one. So even with all genetic clones, you could see causes and conditions, environment, the company that you keep being so essential for both the human and non-human world.
Exactly. That's really what it all is about, isn't it?
Yeah. We are emerging from place. All beings are relational beings. Mm-hmm. And so when we lose a sense of belonging, we stop being responsible for the relational web that we're a part of. And to go back to the I Ching, like that is a reminder of where we are in this web beyond what we can see in this moment.
Right, exactly.
And that which we might intuit, but can't quite grasp. Mm-hmm. And it's an invitation to not need to grasp. It's an invitation to open your hands and allow. Because and that's like, when you allow yourself to be led, then it's just easier to be responsible. Because for me, like, regaining trust in life itself has been a lifelong process. But now that I know as long as I'm alive, I'm held by life.
Right.
Individual lives may be fragile, but the field of life itself is very robust.
Yes.
It is a river that will carry you if you put your feet up. Mm-hmm. And stop forcing things, forcing your identity on people, forcing people to validate you, forcing people to agree with you, or like all of these ridiculous things that we do in the name of selfhood that are really just barriers to relationship.
Well, it's true. And of course, self-validation really is one of the most important things. And many people don't do that or don't know how to do that.
I would say self-compassion is a lot more valuable than self-validation.
Well, I think, of course, that's where it has to start from.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Self-validation is like, you can get into a lot of trouble with that. Mm-hmm. Like, because we just reiterate, I'm this, I'm that, I'm what I do, I'm what I, I'm, and that just tangled up in the identity turbine. You can't even hear what's really going on because the whir of it is so loud.
So true. So true. And I think that's why I find it fascinating that you actually coach and use the I Ching, right? That's how I said the I Ching with people. I find that fascinating because I think it allows the client to crack open
Absolutely
themselves, right? To
absolutely, because it's not my opinion. They're holding the coins on their end, even if we're on a Zoom session. They're holding the coins. They've gathered the coins. They're throwing them themselves. And now we're looking to see what random has said.
Mm-hmm.
We're looking to see, okay, how has this synchronicity unfolded?
Yeah, exactly.
And I think Jung was really right about that. That I think that has a tremendous power of cutting through the whir of the identity turbine and speaking directly to intuition and through intuition and through connection. Like each one of the hexagrams in the I Ching is in relationship to the other. Like there's no ability to use this, to partake of this field and still believe in separation of anything. Every breath you take is connected to another breath. Everything you touch is connected to something else, so like, and you are responsible for that.
Well, I think it's what I like about what you said is that you're looking at the situation in the moment. When you're tossing the cards, how is the energy of that moment?
Right. What is my correct path now?
Yeah.
Because sometimes I'll ask, like, what is my correct path for this morning? Like, because lately I'm in the middle of winter prep and I live in a yurt in the forest, so I have like my chainsaw out, my machete, so my hands are so dirty. I'm doing burn piles. I'm like,
you told me that you're cutting wood for the winter, right?
You're
getting ready for the winter. Yes.
Yeah. So there's like the Zen. In Zen practice, there's the before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. That it's not the thing that you're doing; it's how you're doing it, right?
True.
And I think because I think I'm a very I feel like a very feminine embodiment of in this life. However, like everything that I'm doing would read as absolutely masculine. Like I use a chainsaw. I use a splitting maul every day, like so. But how am I doing that? How am I doing that? What is my approach? How am I still following? I think actually a chainsaw is such an interesting masculine tool. Like my relationship with the chainsaw is still pretty new. So for me, like what this tool is providing for me evokes in me such respect and care and tending and listening and going through my checklist. Am I standing to the left of the saw? Am I not behind it? Is the safety on when I put it down? Like there's so much attention to be paid that it's actually been a very sweet, there's been like a feminine emergence in my relationship with my chainsaw, which was a very big surprise for me, and like everything that I'm doing on that land as steward of that land is following. And it might look like I'm getting shit done, and I am getting shit done, but everything is following. Everything is me looking what is being asked of me today. What is being asked is today what's being asked of me? Rest. Yes. Okay. Well, rest is fertile. I respect rest a great deal. So this is the moment for rest. This is the moment for fire. This is the moment for water. This is the moment for digging. This is the moment for cutting, stacking. Like everything has its moment. And I trust that the big picture, I can be a puny human. I can rest in being a puny human without freaking out or feeling anxious about not knowing. I love not knowing. It's the most intimate thing in the world. It's sexy. Like resting in uncertainty is very enlivening to me because I'm a guest at the surprise party. I'm not the host. I am not the host. I am a guest, and I try to be as respectful a guest as I can be.
Exactly. And I think when you realize that you are a guest, then you just go with the flow because you are the guest, right? That's
Right. And you can have the confidence that comes from humility and not the arrogance that comes from forcing.
exactly. Now, did you write something about the I Ching also? That's your
Well,
book, correct?
this is my book. Yeah.
That's
This is
your
my book.
You're actually, that's what I thought, that you've actually written about the I Ching and that you're using not only the system for so long, but that you've written about it. And is it, well, of course it would be a feminine perspective because you're female, but I know that the I Ching initially, there was a lot of male dominance in the I Ching.
Yeah, there's actually a villainization of the yin that happens in a
Really?
lot. Well, for a long time, there's a sort of a militant Confucian crust, I would say, laid over the I Ching. So I had no problem culturally appropriating it and making it a very feminine American version. And so I'm not really available for conversations about appropriation of this particular document. I have unabashedly put my spin on this version, and that is coming from 25 years of hitting up against some of the hexagrams that just felt very wrong in their interpretation, very off. I would say hexagram 12, hexagram 44. Like there's a few that are yin dominant hexagrams that were in the Confucian lineage treated with a sense of severe danger.
Yeah.
Like especially I would say hexagram 12 because it puts the 3 yin lines are below the 3 yang lines. And so there's this fear of being engulfed by the feminine.
Wow.
Inherent in every version of this hexagram for thousands of years. You know, and I'm like, no, this is the delta. This is where you touch your pussy. This is where the vulva is the interface between the interior and exterior. This is where the new human meets the world. This is you stepping into the dark, wet portal, face down in the mud of the mother. And yeah, you might not like it. And if you're a Confucian warrior politician, you are not going to want that. That moment. You're not going to want to really lay into that moment. But how do you restore without laying face down in that mud and trusting that you are held there in all that fecundity and all that dirty, wet, heavy fecundity? There's nothing wrong with weight. Like when we resort to the love and light, love and light, love and light, you can't know love and light without that being held by that weight, like a weighted blanket almost. You know, the comfort of that swaddle of that weighted blanket, or like the joys of a bath for me after a day of working, doing burn piles and crawling through the dirt, you know, like being so dirty lets that shower, that bath just feel like a rebirth, like it feels baptismal, like a casual baptism, you know?
True. It's so true. You don't even realize, right? I mean, after a hard day's work and out, like you said, burning, chopping, cleaning, and then you're taking a shower, and really even to think of that it really is a rebirth, and how refreshed you feel. Yes, exactly. And how refreshed you feel. That's exactly true. Like a new person.
Yeah, exactly.
And how many of us actually sit in that feeling?
Right.
Because you're just racing to get to the next thing.
Well, when I was traveling through a lot of Islamic countries, I would go to the hammams in Turkey and Morocco and stuff. And their respect for that truth, like sloughing off like those ablutions before ceremony, that thing of like, that there's the skin I no longer need, I would like to very consciously dispose of. I would like to watch it wash down the drain. I would like to do these ablutions and have my new skin come to ceremony in this new skin and be prepared to receive whatever will touch this new skin.
Exactly.
I think there's something very, very, very sacred about that. And I think part of living on my land and like doing so much of it by hand until recently hiring an excavator, which was a revelation.
Oh, wow.
I was not doing that driveway with my machete and my iron bar.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely not. This sacredness in simplicity, and for me, growing up with the childhood that I had, not confusing simplicity and scarcity. Like, I'm not doing without.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not. I think when I moved to my land, some people were like, how are you going to do that? You're going to be in a tent with your dogs and like the land, and like, you don't even know what you're doing. And I was like, I know. How about that? How about that? Like, how are you going to do? What are you going to eat? How are you going to cook? And I was like, no. These things come. Like,
Yes.
everything comes. If I show up, I'm met.
Mm-hmm.
If I show up, I'm met. And like, this is a very, I think, difficult thing to communicate sometimes to clients. Like, you can't give someone that level of trust. They have to keep falling and getting picked up again.
Mm-hmm.
You can't do it unless you're on your knees. You can't do it from standing tall. You have to get down in the delta.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that I ask women when they come in is like, do you know what phase the moon is in, and when was the last time you touched your pussy?
Mm.
Do you know
Oh
what I
my
mean?
God, that must
Like,
be, yeah.
How is your contact with yourself? What is your relationship to pleasure? A lot of women that have teenage children or kids that are grown now have so lost touch with pleasure. And like, sometimes, like, I gave a woman an assignment recently, like 10 days, just for 10 days, we're going to center your pleasure, be it an ice cream, be it a vibrator, be it your husband, be it spaghetti. I don't care what it is. I just want you to have some small expression of your pleasure without regard for anything else, just for 10 days. And she struggled with it.
I'm sure, because I suspect that a lot of people feel that that's selfish.
Yes.
And that we're looked upon as selfish women if we consider ourselves first.
Right. And then do you know what that results in? A people pleaser who is so full of resentment that if you scratch the surface of a people pleaser, a resentful dragon pops
like an
out.
explosion.
Oh my God, people pleasers are so full of hate and contempt. It's unreal. And so many women are in this, are genies in this bottle. Their genius, their djinn, their genie has been in the people pleasing bottle for so long that, like,
you know, and the reality is it's, no is no. And,
and no is beautiful. And is no even no? Because one of the things that I really love teaching is boundaries, especially to people who have a history of being people pleasers. Because I don't believe boundaries come from no. I believe boundaries.
No, I have to agree with you. It's
boundaries
true.
come from yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Boundaries come from here's my desire.
Yes,
I'm going to follow my desire. If you're not aligned with that, then I'm simply turning away. I don't have to say no to you or hurt your feelings, or I might grieve the loss of you because you're not on board with my being so alive that I can't help but follow my heart's desire. That is so clearly the next right thing. That, okay, you're not with that. That's okay. No harm, no foul. You do you. Like,
yeah, exactly. Exactly. But I think that so many, especially women,
women.
it's definitely different for men. But for women, if they consider themselves first, even other women often look at them as selfish.
Yeah, don't surround yourself with those women.
Well, that's what I say, but that's no, of course not. Right. That's exactly the case. I mean, you have to make your own tribe. You have to be around like-minded individuals because that's just the way it is. Otherwise, you're always going to hear negativity.
But if you're not expressing yourself, how are you going to find those people?
That's right.
If you're not actually stepping into who you really are, you're not going to be available for that resonance. So as long as you're stuck in the people-pleasing mode, you're just going to be surrounded by people who just want to harvest your yes.
Yes. And exactly. And so many women, especially, that need help, they don't even know that so many of them don't even know that they're there. I mean, they know that something needs to change perhaps, or something.
They know they feel dead inside. They know they feel dead inside,
Yeah.
and that's all they know. I don't know how to fix this, but I feel dead inside. I don't want to fuck my husband. I don't want to
So
deal with
sad.
my kids. I don't want to go to my job. Like I feel nothing feels alive anymore.
It's so sad. So very
It's
sad that so many
it's so
people are
sad.
living like that. So
But
very
then I think
many.
so many people that I'm like, that my mind actually boggles, and it helps, but it does help me make sense of how we could treat the earth the way that we do, how we could have mass shootings,
Mm-hmm.
how we can be in a climate crisis that we're slow to respond to, how we can allow, if we're disconnected from ourselves, of course we're disconnected from the
Everything.
reverberations of our every action.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a bummer that our culture conditions us to have that separation. I mean, to separating women from their bodies is like, that's like one of the key through lines of our culture, because then you'll always be caught in yearning. You'll always buy that other thing because
Mm-hmm.
you're never going to be home. And home is right here. It's like Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz.
Yes,
Click your
exactly.
heels, click your heels, feel the ground under your feet. It has always been here and will always be here. All you have to do is show up.
Mm-hmm. Right, exactly. It's right. It's right where you always are. It's true.
Exactly where your feet are.
Yeah. Now tell me, how can someone get in touch with you? I mean, I know that you have written the book. I'd like to find out. I definitely would like to put that in the description, how people can get the book. I'm
Oh,
interested in getting the book
I
myself.
would
I'd love
love
to
to
read
hear
it.
your experience. I love when people start to like, because it is really a relationship that you develop with the I Ching.
Yes. I mean,
It's
I took a course many, many years ago.
mhm,
Gosh, it has to be over 20 years ago that I took a course in the I Ching. I found it fascinating, but of course the course was too short. You know, you're only learning few
right.
rudimentary things, but it was very interesting. And I had always wanted to learn more about it. And then, you know, you go off on your way and you're learning about so many other things, but I would love to read your book. I think that's wonderful. And I definitely want to let the audience know where they can get it.
It's only on Amazon because it was actually a book that I really wrote for myself to be
Mhm.
able to work with clients, to have my insights from the I Ching for the last 25 years just in one place. So when I was working with someone, I could,
Right.
and that I could pass that on to them so that there's not this like shutdown that will come with some other additions around like, oh, the feminine is dangerous. The feminine is dangerous. I was like, I don't want my clients to be encountering
Right.
that
Yes.
Confucian legacy. I
Mhm.
want them to be able to have one that is like, oh no, we are not afraid of the feminine here. We understand the
Right.
necessity of engulfment.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And it was wonderful. It was wonderful that you did that, to put down all of that information so that clients have it. That's
Yeah.
just wonderful. And
Yeah,
so again,
it's
I
a
will
way,
definitely put that on there for for the Amazon link. Absolutely.
and it's a way of work. It's a way of like, it's how I work,
Mhm.
and the tone, the voice. If it's a way into working with me for $17. Like if you want to see
Yes.
that feels like, that's a great introduction. It's a great way for you to start developing that relationship. And if the feeling of that resonates with you, I would probably be a good coach for you. And if not, I probably wouldn't.
Right. And right. And as I say, the same thing as being a therapist, I'm not for everybody. Everybody has to find the person, and
Absolutely.
I don't feel bad.
No, no,
And I don't resent the person, and
no,
I'm not upset. I understand that that's the
no.
way it is.
Right.
Everybody finds the person that they can work with.
If I tried to be for everybody, I wouldn't really be able to serve the people that are for me.
That's right. Exactly. That's exactly how it is.
Yeah.
And there are plenty of other coaches and therapists to go around. We're just there, and
So
you have to
many.
find the right person that
Yeah.
speaks to you at the moment too. As we
Right.
said, the moment that you're in and what you need. And
Right.
so how can they get a hold of you if anybody wants to speak
You
with
can
you?
email me hi@reihance.com, REIHANCE.
I will
You
definitely
can,
put that in.
yeah, you can come to my website. You can,
So
I'm
yeah, well,
easy.
okay, so I will put the website down as well. That'd be
I'm
perfect.
really easy to find on Facebook and Instagram. I'm a reluctant TikTok person.
Yeah. I don't use at all, but I use the others. But yeah, so then I will definitely put all of that. I put all of the contacts down in the description because
Great.
I know that people will contact me and they'll ask me right away, especially for the book.
Yeah, definitely.
And the
And
Grow Girl. What about the Grow Girl book?
Grow Girl's under my birth name, Heather Donahue. You can still get that
Yes.
on Amazon and different places. It's a fun romp, and it is definitely a book that is a document of a time that has passed.
Yes.
a world that no longer really
Yeah.
exists.
And it's so and it's so legal now.
Yeah.
I'm in New York. I'm in New York, and the issue with dispensing cannabis and the laws and the rules and who can get the license and who can't and how far you have to be. They're just it's just as everything else is now, right? With the rules,
Yeah.
once somebody's in control,
Right.
of the legality of things.
And then the barriers to entry are shifted, and then the distribution of wealth is no longer to every.
Mm-hmm.
It's no longer distributed the way it was, when it was a black market. I mean, it was very interesting for me to see the collapse of that world and how it changed the community that I used to live in.
Now, is that what initially brought you up to Northern California, and then you started working with the San Francisco writers?
Well, I was always writing. Yeah, that I was living in Nevada City in Northern California, and then living and working a little bit in San Francisco because obviously there's a lot more opportunity there than in Nevada City. And yeah, I was working at the San Francisco Writers Grotto when the book came out and teaching there. Yeah, that was such a natural. Sometimes it feels like I'm still teaching memoir writing, except for people that don't want to write a book.
Yes,
it's because
isn't that funny? And I thought about that as you were speaking. I said it's really similar, right? Writing a memoir, but really not putting it to paper.
Right, because it's about how are we framing our experience? Like, what is the story we tell ourselves about ourselves? What is the story? Like, we have authorial authority over our experience. No matter what is happening externally. I know, and people will always mention the Holocaust when I say this, that it's never about the external circumstances. It just isn't. You have
Viktor Frankl.
Exactly.
Right.
Like
Viktor Frankl. Really, everyone should read that book.
I totally agree. I 100% agree. And the same, like, I feel like in alcoholism and addiction, I'm a recovering alcoholic. And it's like, do you want to be alive or not? If you want to be alive, go for it. Be fully alive.
Mm-hmm.
Don't live a half-life. Don't live somebody else's life. Don't live somebody else's story for you.
No,
that's not yours.
No, exactly. You have to live your story, and you have a right to live your story.
Absolutely. And people thought I was so crazy when I moved up to my land.
And I think it's wonderful.
It has been truly like the greatest experience of my life.
How did you decide on a yurt?
Well, because I live on a ridge. So, and I just got a driveway this year. So I was kind of figuring out where I wanted the minimum impact on the land itself. And so I live on this gorgeous ridge with views all the way to the White Mountains. And it's just, what kind of dwelling could I get to the top of the ridge? So it was what could I carry?
Yes.
Piece by piece. So I couldn't get anything delivered there. I couldn't really bringing up building materials was also kind of rough. So I was like, I think it's going to be a yurt. And it was perfect. It was perfect. And so now I'm getting an Amish built little tiny house that's going to go a little bit lower on the ridge because I'm leaving the top of the ridge for naked archery and blueberry growing and all kinds of other things that I enjoy.
Oh, lovely.
It's going to be like the playground. Yeah. The medicine garden and playground.
Now, is the yurt still up?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. And you'll keep that up.
I think that's probably going to end up being the summer quarters and also guest house for when people come to visit. And then the tiny house will be down below. And
so, and you said that you selected Maine because you were passing through initially.
Yes. Yes. And also it was the end of America and I was deep in the bottom of my alcoholism and there was nowhere else to run. I was literally the end of America. Where else was I going to go?
Right.
I'd been to every corner of America and nothing felt like home because I was not at home in myself.
Yes.
And I did not want to live. I thought my obituary had been written when I was 25 and what else could I possibly do that it would mean anything? I had no name. I had no trajectory. I was completely at odds. If I hadn't had my dog, I wouldn't still be alive.
And this is why I say it's a story of resilience, because think about it, the very thing that you are, your name,
Yeah,
was
no
taken
kidding.
from you, which
Right.
was horrific. When I heard your story, I just couldn't even believe it. How does somebody pick up the pieces and go on? But you did.
Yeah.
You did.
And what the way I had to reconfigure my entire relationship with identity is now became like that became my gift to open, and it's what I can offer now. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
And so if somebody is like, I've always been a mother, who am I now? All right, take my hand. Let's walk through this. You've welcome to the surprise party. Shit's about to get amazing.
Yes.
You just opened a portal to magic. Come on in. But it's not comfortable.
No.
It's not comfortable.
No, but at least they have you to help them. You know what I mean? That you're there walking alongside of them.
And I love doing it. I love it. Like I wouldn't change anything. That does not mean that people didn't behave badly.
Right. Oh, exactly. Right.
That does not mean that people did not behave badly,
No.
but I wouldn't do anything different.
No. But that's what they say in forgiveness. My first show, I had actress Brenda Edelman on.
Uh-huh.
And we had known each other in passing for a number of years, and her story is incredible. And the act of forgiveness.
Yeah.
Forgiving her father who killed her. And but the forgiveness is for yourself. Right? Because not that the people others aren't culpable of what they've done.
Right. But you're releasing yourself from that story,
yes.
like from that story.
Because
like,
the forgiveness is for yourself. You know, you forgive others because you have to survive. You're going on. It's not that that they are excused from all blame. No, not at all.
No. Well, but I don't have, I would say I don't have room for blame.
Mm-hmm.
I have room for, you're just not welcome here. Like there's just no, thank you. No, I'm not interested in that. Right. I'm not available for that.
Which is wonderful. On the other hand, as soon as I heard it, I say, oh my gosh, how could someone do that to someone else? Like to me, they're very definitely people that are culpable for their actions. That's how I feel.
Absolutely. But can you recognize someone's culpability without eating the poison of blame yourself?
Right. And that's right. And that you have to do for yourself so that you can go on. It's true.
Absolutely. But if I try to force that, I'm utterly fucked.
Mm-hmm.
Like that metabolization has to happen like me metabolizing a slice of pizza. Yes. I can't make it happen.
Right. Naturally, it has to occur. Yes.
You know, I have to just be like, okay, pizza's in my mouth. Now pizza's in my belly. All right. I'm not going to go swimming for an hour. I'm just going to let this metabolize.
It's like stages of grief, right? You're not.
For sure.
Yeah. I mean,
you're on the ride.
I do a group that, you have a right to grieve, because how many times other people don't want you grieving, or they want you to get over it quickly, or they want you to be in a different stage, and it cannot be.
Because it makes them uncomfortable.
Exactly.
They don't want that mirror.
No.
Grieving is what makes us human.
Yes.
Our grief is the measure of our heart.
Mm-hmm.
We want that, like that heart breaking open is like allows us to be human beings.
And everybody's different in how they move through the process of grief. But it is true that it makes others uncomfortable, and they're hoping that you get over it quickly. So,
and then one of my favorite handmaidens of grief is holy wrath. Not just rage.
Yes.
But when that spiritual Drano just comes up from your feet and you are just like a vessel for and people really like, that'll clear a room.
Yeah.
That'll give you some space to grieve.
That's for sure.
And I do feel sometimes like that is like holy wrath's position for the grieving. Like y'all uncomfortable? Yes. Okay, then go. And GTFO.
Yeah. And that's what I say. And everybody has a right to experience that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's I think another one of those things that we get afraid of, because that engulfment.
Yes.
Because what if I never come out of this? What if this never ends? Because sometimes if you're like a year, when I first got sober, I was crying, pissed at the world or sobbing, pissed at the world or sobbing, pissed at the world or sobbing in this like cycling through it, grieving, rage, grief, rage, grief, rage, grief, rage. And it's like, okay, this is where I'm at. This is what we're doing. So I got a job as a gardener, got on my knees, dug in the dirt, didn't do a job where I had to think about anything. I just literally put a knife in the dirt every day for 40 hours a week. Had grief and rage. What else could I do? I wasn't going to avoid it anymore. Let it be what it is.
Yeah, and you have to work through it. Yeah.
And
you
not,
have a right
not
to
even
feel
work
that
through it.
too. But you have the right to feel that. You have a right to be in
Absolutely.
that space at the moment.
Absolutely. And it's not even like, I think sometimes sometimes when people come to me like, oh, this is really hard work. This is really hard work. And I was like, let's look at that. Look at that phrasing. Is this really hard work? Or is all of that hardness your resistance to softening? I don't think grieving is hard work. I think grieving is very soft work. It's the softest work we're assigned. And if we clench against it, it'll contort our bodies and minds in all sorts of really damaging ways. But if we can have that if we can meet it with softness, like I don't think the work that I do with people is hard work. I think it's soft work. But if, I mean, I grew up in a house where vulnerability was seriously frowned upon, so can we, I think one of the things that has taken me years of coaching to learn is like, how do I provide safety and allow discomfort? Because like some people, as soon as they feel uncomfortable, they're like, I'm unsafe. And it's like, okay, I hear you. And if let's work on this discernment between danger and discomfort so that you can not only have the skill of understanding that discernment so that when it's like, okay, there's a tiger, I'm going to turn away. Legit, right?
Yes, exactly.
versus like my heart is beating faster because of this thought. Okay, then you're not actually unsafe. I know it can feel unsafe because it's a trauma response from some time when you were legit unsafe.
Yes, right.
But let's be together now here. And let's soften into this so that you can actually feel it. Because if you're clenched, you're not even going to be able to feel, where is it in your body? Is it in your solar plexus? Is it in your heart? Is it in your throat? Is it in your, where is it? Let's find it together. And no, that's not always going to feel safe. It's not always going to feel safe.
No.
I mean, I'm holding you here. I'm witnessing you here, but yeah, we're going to have to, I'm here, but you're the one feeling along the wet cave wall. I can't do that for you.
No, and I think everybody comes to that at a different time. Some
Absolutely.
people, they may very often. I know I've done a lot of groups with soul collage, which I absolutely love.
What is that?
I just absolutely love it. She was a therapist, a doctor of divinity, Sina Frost. She created this system.
Oh, cool.
It's almost, I call it a visual record of your life. And they're cards that you create, and they're suits, and people scribe from them. They write from them. I discovered them personally. I had gone to a group, and a woman had stood up and she said that she had used soul collage cards. She had been sexually assaulted as a child. And she said that she had created over 500 cards, soul collage cards, and that had she not done that, and she had journaled from these cards. And she said, had she not had done that, she would have committed suicide. And when I heard that, I said, I need to find out about these cards. And so I looked and I found training, and I went out west to training. And I just really believe they're a visual journal of your life. And you can journal from them. You can talk in groups. You can read cards. Some people read their card. They pull cards every day. But I know that using them in groups, there are many people that they're not prepared to deal with things, and they get up and they leave because they can't do it.
Well, what does Jung say? If that which we don't, that in the subconscious that we don't make conscious manifests itself as fate. So
yes,
touching those things, like sometimes, what greater severing from belonging can there be than childhood sexual assault?
Right, exactly.
How do you ever trust belonging after that?
But I give the woman credit because she used the cards to get herself to heal, more or less, and continue to heal and continue to use them. But so many, when I've had the class, so many, they do get up and leave. They're just not prepared. And it is, and it's pictures are visceral. They evoke emotions, whatever those may be. And some people are just not prepared to deal with that. And so they feel more comfortable making an excuse and leaving. Right. And so, you know what? You don't meet them at that point. They're not prepared for that. Like you said, one of your clients saying, I'm uncomfortable, or I'm scared, or I'm feeling something, and they want to stop. Then they're not prepared at that moment.
Right. So how do you meet them where they're at without reiterating too much the pattern? Because then that's not really helping anyone.
No, exactly.
So I find that interesting, but I'm so fascinated what you're saying about these cards, because what an amazing method of titration.
Yes.
For healing trauma, like for being able to do one card at a time. Like, this is what I can look at today. This is the little subconscious piece that I can touch today. And that's, I think the I Ching too is like, a question that I often ask the I Ching is, what am I not willing to see? Like, where are my blind spots today? Where is, like, am I in scarcity thinking? And why is that? What am I not seeing? What am I turned away from without even realizing it? I think that's like with those cards, like anything that's just giving us that access to intuition beyond the self, beyond identity, like cutting through to that intuition, reconnecting that cosmic tether, Yeah,
exactly. I mean, I love them, and I actually do them.
Great.
I have about 150 of my own.
I want to do that. That's really cool.
But I find it so, I mean, that's a talk for another day, but I find it fascinating how telling human beings are from that.
Of course.
Very telling. I mean, some, I always give the example. So I've had a class, and some come, and the cards, because this woman created this system, the cards are 5 by 7. There are people who will sit there and they cannot make the 5 by 7 card, and they will begin to try to negotiate. Can't we have a bigger card? Can't we have a bigger card? I don't want to cut this. Why can't we have a big card? Why can't we make them bigger? So it's amazing how telling the whole system is before they even actually make a card, because they won't cut the pictures. They want this, they want that. They don't know what to do. Yeah, it's very telling.
Talk about expediting therapy.
Oh, yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. I love it myself, because I'm a doer, not a beer, and I'm moving around all the time. So for me, just to sit down and to cut, and I cut them very intricately. So I actually make them look like a collage on the card, and a cutting, there's some people, they just rip the picture, they glue everything on, and that's fine. That's them. But I actually cut around them. That's my moments of sitting and meditating. So, but I find that they work really well with people who want to work with them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why I find that I Ching so fascinating. We're going to have to definitely talk about it. I would love to. I'm definitely going to get the book, and I definitely want to find out more about it.
You really will only, the I Ching requires a relationship with it. Yeah. Anything you read about it is not going to really be helpful. It's just going to, if you do a daily casting each morning and just start to see because you'll start to see certain hexagrams come up at certain periods of time repeatedly, way more than chance would suggest. So I keep an I Ching journal, so I see like what's coming up, what patterns are repeating at a particular time,
Oh, that sounds wonderful. Definitely, like I said, I took that course many years ago. I found it fascinating, but I never really took the time to actually use it, because, as you said, it has to be a system that you're using.
Yeah. That you're dancing with. Like, it's not, I think using feels weird too. It's not like that. It's like a system that you're kind of like willing to be enveloped by. If that,
right.
I guess sometimes when I
a better way of saying yes.
Yeah, it just feels too grand and mysterious, but it kind of is grand and mysterious. Like I just how it is.
Yeah. That'd be wonderful to delve into it deeper. I mean, we could talk about everything forever. We could go on and on, but I know you have limited time. I know you have clients. I know you said that you're getting yourself prepared for the winter. I definitely would love to have you on again. I mean, there's so much to always talk about, isn't there?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I would, if you start to work with the I Ching, I would love to like do a deeper dive.
Oh yeah. I think
talk
that's
about
great.
What's coming up for you. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Wonderful. Yes, definitely. I will be in touch. That's
okay. Sounds good.
That's a given. But again, I want to thank you so much.
My pleasure.
For coming and talking to the audience today.
My pleasure.
And I will speak to you soon, Ray. Once again, thank you.
Thank you so much, Marissa. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're quite welcome. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye now.